Alright, so welcome for part 8 in the modular inventory tutorial series. This time, we'll improve the inventory and we'll add a nice basic crafting system. So yeah, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the inventory manager here. Instead of having it in the scene, I'm gonna make that a auto load scene instead. So we'll be able to use the inventory manager anywhere in the game. That's going to help us a lot for different things. We know that for the inventory manager, we need other nodes in the scene here. So what I'll do for the inventory manager, I'll just change the type. So right click, change type. I'll choose the canvas layer, and in there, I'll put everything that it needs. So the item in hand, item info, and everything there, right there. So take those and drag them in the inventory manager there. And then I can simply right click this one and save as scene. I'll save it in managers, inventory manager, TSCN, save that. And now I can remove it from here, and since I don't have any managers here, I'll just delete the node managers, delete, and there. Now if I go in my project settings, in my Autoload, I have a bunch of Autoload scripts here. Now I'm gonna add a Autoload scene, which is basically the same. So just open the folder, managers, inventory manager, TSCN, inventory manager. All right, add that and close. So now my inventory manager will be available everywhere, and it will be instantiated when I start the game. The inventory manager is loaded, and if I open an inventory, I can look at the item, I can pick them and move them around. So it works just like I never touched it. But the thing is, there's a few things that are not correct, like the split stack. So if I try to split a stack, so shift right click this, split my stack, but I can also move the UI behind. So we want to prevent that. So if we go in the split stack scene, so we'll add a pop-up control. So right click, add child node, pop up this one. So this will prevent any click outside of it. So what I'll do is I'll move everything inside of it in the split stack. So I'll get that reference to it, duplicate that. This is going to be a pop-up, and I'll call it just pop-up. And when we display the split stack, we'll call pop-up.popup. And then when we close it, when we're done, we want to hide it. So here it's going to hide the split stack, but it's not going to hide the pop-up. So we need to add the line for that. But instead of adding here pop-up.hide and adding it here too, and if somewhere else in your code you hide this split stack somehow, then it's not going to hide the pop-up. So what we'll do instead is we will click the split stack. We'll go in the signals, the node signals, and here we have hide, canvas item, hide. So this is the signal sent when this one is hidden. We'll connect to it. On split stack hide, connect. So here, so even if you call hide from outside, it will hide the pop-up correctly. Now we need to click on split stack, go in inspector, and the pop-up here, we need to assign it, and pop-up. That's it. All right, and then one last thing, the pop-up itself, if I make it visible, it's just a tiny square in the upper corner, and that's a problem because that's the only place you can click. Well, that's the only place that will prevent clicks. So what I'll do is do layout and full rect. The pop-up will prevent clicks in the whole screen now. So then main panel, let's make it center again. All right, so if I open my chest, try to split something, I can click outside and I can change the quantity correctly, and then that's working perfect. So we can go to the next thing. And I also found a little bug in the code in the inventory container. Inventory container GD, yeah, this one. When you close the chest, here I have open for some reason, but it should be closed, because else when you click the X from the window, it's gonna call close here, and then it would open the inventory for some reason, and then yeah, just change that to if you had open here. Now for the next change, it's gonna be for the player signals, mainly for the interaction with the item. So like when you pick up an item and you put it in your inventory, you might want to check if the player has the item in its inventory correctly and stuff like that, like the upgrade kit. Well, in the player inventory, we have content change. So when the content of the player inventory change, we get the upgradable items, and if we have any, then we'll send the signal. So I'm going to change a bit how this works. Instead, the inventory manager we'll have a array of groups of inventory. So we could have a group of inventories that is called player and so on. So later we could add new groups. Then later, if you want to find item in those group, it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be the same code for everything, the player and your new stuff. And we're going to use that for the crafting later. So let's start breaking the code. Let's go in the inventory manager, and at the top, I'm going to change the player inventories for inventory groups, and then this is going to be a dictionary. Let's set it to an empty dictionary. There you go. We're going to remove the player inventory ready because we're going to change that later. All right, so let's go at the bottom of the script and we'll add new functions and we'll fix the broken code. So just before the signals function has space for items. Then here we'll get the items data, and then we'll get a group ID. So which group do we want to scan for items? And the item data is something that we're going to add to build item dynamically. So we'll see a bit later. For now, it's just going to be some simple data with simply the item ID and the quantity that you want. Later, we could have more stuff, so you could create your item and have the rarity in the data and everything like that. So here, we'll create these items from the data var items. I'll call the item manager get items. So this function does not exist yet, so we'll create it. Items data. Let's create that one, and we'll come back here. Copy that, go in item manager. Let's go down where we have the get item, and underneath I'll have a function get items, and this is an array. So then inside this function, we just need to go through all the data and create those items. A new item array, then for each data in the items data, we'll add to the item array, the items array append. Here, we'll create a new function again, get item from data, and we'll pass in the data. Yeah, and then at the end, we'll return the items array. All right, now let's create that other function. Function get item from data, and then this one will just get the basic item. So var item is equal to get item. So the one just above, right here, the one that we were always using before. But now I'm going to give it the item ID. So item data.id. So that's the little data structure that we'll create soon. Then the item quantity is going to be equal to item data.quantity and return it. Return item. All right, that's it. So yeah, for now, the item data will only have the ID and quantity, but you could add more in there and build your item here. And that's useful for copying item. If I would do var new item is equal to item, then those two are the same item. So if I move this item around in the inventory, it's going to mess with the other one. It's going to create a lot of bugs and stuff like that. So that's why you can create it from data. And then later in the item code, you could get the data and duplicate the item this way. So let's go back to the inventory manager. So now we get our items. Now we need to know if there is space for those items. So first, we'll try to place the stackable items for inventory in inventory groups. Then we'll give it the group ID. We will try to put them in the inventories. So what we'll do is in each inventory, we will do the try place stack items, and then we'll send the item, and it will return what remains of the items. So if can place the item, it might return nothing. If the items array is empty, then that means that there is place for the item, and will return true. Now let's create this try place stack item in the inventory. Inventory GD. So right here, add item. So here I'll do function try place stack items. So here we try to place a stackable item in the array. If they can be placed, they are removed. If they can stack, well, they are removed if the stack is empty. For this code, that's an array. This is going to be pretty simple for this part. For each slot in all of those slots, if we have an item in the slot and the item quantity is lower than the stack size, so if there is something and there is still place for more, if your stack is not full, that's it. So if that's the case, we'll get the remaining free space. So that's going to be equal to the the maximum stack size minus what it has in it. After that, we know that there is free space. Now we need to check for each item that we are passing in if one of those can go on the same one. This one is just a reverse loop, because if you remove an item from the array and you remove it at the beginning, it's going to change where the loop is going. Because if we have item 1, item 2, and item 3, and if you start from the beginning, then you check for item 1. If it is correct, you could place it. Then it would be removed. Then you would be left with item 2 and item 3. But the position in the loop would increase by 1, and then it would skip item 2 and go to item 3. So that might be a problem. So instead, we start from the end. So we check, can 3 go there? If it can, we just remove it. Then we -1. Then we go to 2. And so that way, we avoid problems. All right, so next one. Now we need to check if the item is the same. So is the ID the same ID as the item that is in the slot? That's the case. Then we check, is the item quantity lower or equal to free space? So if the item that we're trying to place in, we have less than the free space. So if the free space is 5, but we only have one item, then we'll remove this item from the array. So the free space will now be minus the item that we were placing in. Maybe the next item is also the same, so it could place the rest of the item there. Then this item is removed from the array. But if the quantity is greater than the free space, else the item quantity, the quantity of the item that we're trying to place will be reduced by the free space, and then we break, because this space is full now. And the break will break from the closest loop. So it's going to be this loop here, where it's looping through all the items. Then it's going to go back to the main loop for each slot. So it's going to go to the next one, and then it's going to start again. So that is if you have two unfinished stack, one next to the other, then it would fill the first, it would go back to the main loop and fill the second one, if you have enough items to fill those. So now return the remaining items. All right, so that's good. Now we can go back to the inventory manager. Try place stack item. Okay, so that was simply to put the stackable item in the inventory first, so it's not just a bunch of unfinished stack everywhere. The next part is for the normal item. Just put them in a free slot for each inventory in the inventory group. We will get our items from the inventory accept items, and we pass the item. This one is only to know if it accepts the item, because your equipment slot won't accept items that are not equipment. And later you could have ingredient bag for alchemy. You can only put plants in there, stuff like this. So let's go and create accept items. Back to inventory, and here function accept items array. This one is pretty simple. It's again for each slots that we have in the inventory. We'll do the reversed loop if the slot accept item, which means that we're going to have to go in the slot and add this function, and that's the rest. So if the slot accept the item, we just remove it. That's it. We break, we go to the next slot, and then we return the remaining items. So let's take a look at accept item in the inventory slot. So inventory slot GD. So right here, when we have try put item, we'll just have a new function above. So this little function, accept item, will pass in the new item that we want to try to put in. It will simply return if we have a new item and we don't have an item already in here. And now, since this is the same as this little part, we can simply put accept item down there. So return accept item, or so that's the try put, if you can put the item in the slot. Now we need to do this for the equipment slot. So equipment slot GD, just above the try put item, I'll put this one. Function accept item will get the new item that we want to put in. And here we need to check, is the new item type the same as the type of this equipment slot? And the base slot need to be able to accept this item too. So we'll call the parent. Here we can call also accept item here. So try put item in the equipment slot, we'll check if accept the item, and then we try to put the item. So back in the inventory, we're going to check if the slots accept the item. If it does, remove it and return what's remaining. back to Inventory Manager. After those two loops, we should be good. We should know if we have any remaining item. So we return the size of the array. Well, if the size of the array is less or equal to 0. Well, it shouldn't be less normally, but yeah, just in case. If it's equal to 0, there's no more item. So that's it. So with that, we can fix the on-item pick, because here, instead of going for each inventory in player inventories, since this has space for item, looks in a group of inventory, if has space for item, it's supposed to be an array of item data. So here I'll give it the item and I'll create a function get data. And after that, we'll give it the group ID player, so the inventory of the player. Then it's pretty simple. If it has space for it, we know that the item will be picked. Then we can call the add item, a new add items for group of inventory. But first, I guess I'm gonna go and do the get a data function here in the items. So let's go in the item script, item GD. I'll go at the bottom here and just after destroy, get data. So it's simply gonna return the ID of the item and the quantity of the item. And later we might come back here when we're gonna work on the saving your inventories and all the item in there. We'll come back here and improve a lot the data, because we want to save all the components on the item and all the data that there is on it. So when you load your save, you have the same item at the same place and everything. So we'll come back to this in the future part. But for now, that should work. So save that. I'm gonna go back, inventory manager. If you have space for those items, which is only one, but yeah, when you pick an item, you could pick multiple items at once. Maybe you could have big bags or special loots, but this function only sends one item. So we'll put it in an array. We'll get the data. All right. So now we'll have a new function, add items. Then the add items will add the item that we're passing in, and it's going to be an array of item. This one will not be item data. It's just going to be the item itself, because here we only want to test if it can be placed in the inventory. We don't want to delete or remove the real items. So that's why we get the data to create some fake item and try to put them in the inventory. Here we want to put the real item. So then we can remove that, because we can tell the sender of the signal that we picked those. Later we could rework this, because since the inventory manager is now a auto-load scene, we could simply call the has space item, put the item there instead of doing this, but I'll keep that for another time. So add item, and then in the player group, now we need to create this add item function. So I'll put it right there under has space for item function, add items, and it's gonna be almost like that one. So for each item in the items that we're getting, we'll try to place them. The first thing is the stackable item. So if the item that we're getting is stackable, and for now the way that we know if it's stackable is if the stack size is greater than 1, easy. So if it is stackable, for each inventory in the group, we'll call the inventory add a stack item. So it's almost like the try place stack item, but this one is going to be placing it for real. Let's go and create that one right now. Inventory. So here we try to place it. We accept the item. We check if we can accept. So here we have add item, and just underneath this one, I'll do function add stack item, and it's only one item. So now we need to check. So if the item that we're getting is stackable, then for each slot, we'll check if we can stack the item on top of it. If there is an item and the item is the same ID, and the item is less than the stack size, then if that's the case, we'll put the item in it and we'll get the remainder. If the item is null, then it filled the stack, so we remove the item. And then we return what's left. Let's go back to item manager. So now we add stack item, and if the item is null, so if we placed it, then we can break, because this item is done. So next is going to be another loop. If it was a stackable item and it went through all the inventories, then it will go to a new empty slot. If it's not a stackable item, then it's just gonna go here directly. So the first thing is if we have an item, because maybe we had a stackable item, it went on the stack, then it's null, so it's gonna break from this loop, then it's gonna go here. If it's null, then just go back and continue looping. So pretty much the same for each inventory. We'll do inventory add item, the item that we're giving it. If the slot doesn't accept the item, it should return it. So if it's a equipment slot or something, and then if we don't have any item left, you can stop the loop and keep going with the other item. And that's it. That should be it for this one. Now I'm gonna go improve the add item. So let's go back in inventory, this little add item. Let's change it a bit because the first thing we want to do is we want to place the items that can stack on unfinished stack first. So that's going to be pretty simple. We already have the function for it. So item is equal to add stack item. So this will stack it if it can, then return the item. And then here what we want to do is place the item on the first available slot. Pretty simple, but first here we need to do if item, because this can be null. Then for each slot, we'll do if try put item. If we can put it, then item is equal to s.put_item. That's pretty much the same. So that's pretty much it for the add item. We're gonna go back in the inventory manager, and now we're gonna work a bit more on the groups. So we're gonna add a function at the bottom, because here on player inventory ready, that's not something that we're gonna use anymore. So first I'm gonna add the function for adding a group. So right here, I'm gonna add a function, add inventory to group. We'll get the inventory and the group ID. So if the inventory group doesn't have the group ID, we'll add a new array. Then we'll add the inventory that we're passing to that group. And the last thing we need to do is in the inventory itself, we need to have the group too. So we'll go in the inventory. Let's go at the bottom. And just before the open close, I'm gonna add this function. Add group, we'll pass in the group ID. We'll create a variable for the groups. We'll set it. And then for each slot, we'll set the group for each slot too. So let's create the group variable. Let's go at the top, var groups, empty array. There we go. Then the next thing is to add it to the slot itself. So let's go to the inventory slot. Inventory slot, go at the bottom probably. Yeah. And yeah, right there, add group, group ID, and it's the same. So we need a variable for the groups. Let's go at the top and right there. So the variable groups is an array, and then is on player is not going to be used anymore. So we'll remove that. All right, save that. Now we just broke a bunch of other stuff, but let's fix everything. The easy way to fix those, what I could do is Control-Shift-F to find is on player. So it's going to find this stacks everywhere. And at the bottom here, we have inventory player. So when the inventory player is ready, it's going to go through all its inventories and set each slot to is on player to true. So that's not going to be needed anymore. We'll come back here to add new stuff. Then the item usable in the function getCanUse, it's looking to see if the item is on player, but instead what we can do is item slot dot group dot has, and then we can pass in the player group ID. If this slot has the group player, then you can use it. Then in item itself, we have a signal item placed in player inventory. So instead of being all of this, it's just going to be placed in inventory. That's it, and nothing in there. So it's going to emit a signal when it's placed in an inventory in general, and then we'll be able to check, is it the inventory we seek? And yeah, so change the where it's called at the bottom here, emit signal. So when you set the slot, so here, yeah, item slot is equal to the value, but then instead of emit signal, item placed on all of that, item placed in inventory, and then that's it. So it's basically placed. It has been placed in the item slot. Yeah, it could be different, but for now it should work. And that's it. So if we save everything and then refresh, we don't have is on player anymore. All right. Now the signal that we just removed, some other script might be using it. So now we will have to go and fix that. So if I do again, Control-Shift-F, placed in player, and let's just find that. We have a few here in item usable. So here we connect to the signal item placed in player inventory, but we're going to change that. Instead, we're going to create a new signal. So when something change in an inventory group, it's going to send a signal. So other code could listen to the change, and if it's the group that they want, that they're interested in, then they could do something with that. So it's going to be a signal in the signal manager connect, and then it's going to be inventory group content changed, and then on inventory group content changed. Let's change the function for this. At the bottom here, we have on item placed, so on inventory group content change, the value that we'll receive here is going to be the group ID, and then if that group ID is equal to player, then we'll emit the signal can use change. So now we can go in the signal manager and add this signal. So I'll control click signal manager, and it's in the inventory, so signal inventory group content change, and I'll get the group ID. Oh, I think I'm going to change that. Instead of sending the group ID, I'm going to send all the groups instead. So I'm going to go back to my item usable, and at the bottom, instead of checking if this group is the player, I'm going to check if the groups that I'm receiving contain has player there. Because the other way I was thinking is when you place an item in groups, they will send a signal for each group, but it would be better to just send one with all the groups that you have instead. Now, signal manager, we have the inventory group content changed, but here the player inventory ready, we can remove that. It's not going to be needed anymore. And the has upgradable item, I'm going to remove this. So let's fix the has upgradable item. So if I do Control Shift F, has upgrade, we'll search for has upgradable item, find. So in the player inventory, we have a bunch of that. The item upgrade has this signal, and the signal manager, but we just removed it. I guess if I save and refresh, then it's only the inventory player and the item upgrade. So I guess I'm going to start with the player inventory. I'll fix everything here, and then I'll go back to the item upgrade. Inventory player. Here, inventories, I'm not going to need that anymore. Delete it. So here we emit the signal player ready. So we were doing that for the inventory manager, so it knows what is the inventory for the player. But now we're going to set it here instead, so we can remove this one too. Upgrade item. On upgrade item. This one will keep it. Then this is where the new stuff will come in. Here we have on content change, and we're listening to that. We're not going to do that anymore, so delete those. Now, what we're going to do here is inventory manager dot add inventory to group. Then here we will send equipment, and we'll send it to the group player. So now the inventory manager will know that in the group player we have equipment. Then we can do the others. We'll have the inventory left and inventory right. So that's it. And now that's where your order matters. So if you want to pick up an item on the ground and it get placed in the equipment first, then you would put your equipment at the top. It's going to be the first inventory in the group. If you want that when you pick up an item, that it's placed in your pockets first, in your inventory, then you would put your inventory at the top and you would add the equipment last. Now, get upgradable item, that's going to be moved. It's not going to be here anymore. On content change, that's just going to be removed. On upgrade item, this one is going to stay. So basically, we can delete those. Yeah, on upgrade item, we're going to upgrade it. Oh, content change here, we can remove that. So the get upgradable items is going to go in the inventory manager. So I'm going to cut it, and let's go in the inventory manager. So I'm going to put that right here, paste that. So get upgradable items. Now this is going to get a group ID. Then we still have the valid items. Now instead of here for inventory in this little array, we'll change it for inventory group. I can pick this one here, inventory groups, and the group ID that we get. Then for each slot, check if it's upgradable, and then add it to the array. So everything else stays the same, right? So let's go back in the inventory player. Here we get the valid items on upgrade item. Here we just add inventory manager dot get upgradable items in the group player. Yeah, we shuffle the array and then get the first one. Oh, and here I could upgrade it a bit. Here let's say that var item is equal to the first one. So instead of having that everywhere, I can simply do item.level, and item.rarity +1. And here at the end, the item should emit the signal that it changed. So item slot dot emit signal, item changed. So with that, we'll be able to update the different upgradable kit and stuff to know if there was anything valid, and then update the can use and everything. Now we had another signal that we had to connect, I think. Oh, so in item upgrade, now the signal has upgradable item, remove it, and instead we're gonna overwrite the one that we get from item usable. So if we control click item usable, we can just go on that one. So the uninventory group content change. I'm gonna copy that function, go in my item upgrade, and overwrite this one. If the group has player, then can use is going to be equal to inventory manager dot has upgradable item in the group player. So we'll create a function to know if there is. We could use the get upgradable item, but it's just going to do a lot of loops for what we need. So instead we'll use a little lighter loop for that, just to improve a bit the code. Let's create this has upgradable item in the inventory. So control click inventory manager. I'll go at the bottom, right below get upgradable item. Has upgradable item. I'll get the group ID, and then for each inventory in that group, if the inventory has upgradable item. So this one, I'm going to go in the inventory, and when the content of the inventory change, I'm going to make sure that the inventory itself calculate if it has an upgradable item, and then set a value. Because else, if I would have a loop instead, a function, then when you place an item, every upgrade kit would call this function and do the loop. So instead, if it's a fixed value and the inventory will calculate it once, then it's going to be a lot easier on the improvement of the code. If it finds just one of those that is true, then it's returning true. So it has one. We only need one minimum. So that's correct. All right, let's go in the inventory and add that. So in the inventory, here we'll add has upgradable items, and by default it's going to be false. So now to know if the inventory has an upgradable item, we'll go at the bottom and we'll add a function. So yeah, just below here. So it's pretty much the same as when you get the upgradable item. For each slot, we check if the item is upgradable. If it is, then set it to true and return. It's done. If we don't find any, then it's going to be false. There you go. Now we need to call this set upgradable item somewhere when something changes in the inventory. Every time we need to check that. I'll go a bit lower here. We already have on item changed, and it's going to emit the signal content changed. And now this one will send the groups. That's something that we need to change too. So groups. But then I'm going to have a function here. Content has changed. And in here, I'm going to call my function set upgradable item. And after that, I will emit the signal content change. And so here, the call content has changed instead. Because this function, I'm going to have to put it everywhere the item changes. So if I go back in my code, signal content change. This one, I'll modify it a bit more though. So if not item, I'll break the loop. And then when I return the item, I'm going to call the content has changed. So save that. I might be forgetting something, but I guess I could start the game and find what I'm missing. So let's just start the game and see if it's going to crash. Start. Yes. So on player inventory ready, that's not needed anymore. So that's the inventory manager. The identifier player inventory doesn't exist. So yeah, I forgot to remove that one. All right, let's see. Next, F5. All right, the game starts. Can I pick up something? Pick up the helmet? Yes. Go in my chest. And if I take a rarity upgrade kit, put it at the bottom. Okay, so now it's not usable. Yeah, I cannot use it. So there's something with that. So let's try to find where is the missing piece. So I guess to start, I can go in my item upgrade. So I'll put a breakpoint here. So if I start the game, put a upgrade kit in my hotbar, put a item in my inventory, it should go here. If it's not even going there, then I'm missing some signal somewhere. Let's start. I'll pick a upgrade kit, put it in my bar. All right. Then if I pick my helmet, All right, so the breakpoint was never hit, so let's find out. This is called in the item usable. In the item usable, I'm connecting to the inventory group content changed, which is in the signal manager. Inventory group content change. When is it called? So if I do Control Shift F, find it, then I'll have everywhere. And then where do I emit? So nowhere. Yeah, so it's never emitted. So what I'll do is fix that. All right, so this signal is gonna be in the inventory manager. So inventory manager, let's go at the top. And when I do the uninventory ready, that's where we should connect to the signal, the content change signal. Well, yeah, there's a little detail here. In the equipment GD, the signal on ready, it's gonna call the inventory ready. And I think it's calling it twice because it's calling it here. And in the parent inventory, when it's ready, it's gonna call the inventory ready. So what I'll do is I'll just make a little note of that. If this first part is mainly for the hotbar because the hotbar doesn't have content changed signal, and the other part is to know if it's already connected. All right, so now I need to create this function on inventory content changed. I'll go at the bottom. There you go, on inventory content change with the groups, and then we'll emit the signal inventory group content changed. Now that should work. Let's see. Open the chest, pick up a upgrade kit, put it in the hotbar, and put it in the inventory. Then the breakpoint works. I can remove it and continue. F7. If I pick up my helmet, I can upgrade it. So I can press 1, head. Let's put that full screen and little helmet. And I can pick another one and use it. Rare head. All right, so that seems to be good for all the inventory stuff. Now, I guess I could start with the crafting. So let's close that. I'm going to start with the UI for the crafting, and we'll do the code after. What I'm going to have is a list of recipes, inventory, PSCN. So this little inventory panel, I'm going to make it general like the window. So here, could Control Shift S, this. Instead of inventory, it's going to be InnerPanel. I'll put that in UI, save that here. Now I can change the name, so InnerPanel, the label here, panel name, and the slot container, I can remove it, remove the script for this one. All right, I guess I can save that. Now for the code, add a script, InnerPanel in UI, yes, create. All right, so class name, InnerPanel, it's gonna extend the panel container, and I'm gonna export a variable for the panel title. It's gonna be a setGet, so I'm gonna set the title directly here. Label, text, and set the value. So in here, InnerPanel, I can assign the label. So I can save that. Now I could change my inventory, TSCN, to use this new panel. So what I could do, what I can do is close this inventory and get my panel, right click, new inherited scene. So this is my panel here. Now what we'll do is merge from scene, and I'll get my inventory panel itself, inventory TSCN, open, and I basically only need the slot container here, so okay, and I'll put it in the margin container. This, I'll remove the script, and I'll put the inventory script, inventory GD, put that on here. If I click it, I need to assign my slot container, so slot container, and then the other one, the title, I can go in the code, and I don't need the title anymore here, so I can extend InnerPanel, set title here, it already exists. Here I place some little hyphen, so I guess I could keep those. So I'll bring those on the other side, so I'll cut that, but set title is going to be removed. Here I'm trying to set title at the top here too. I can remove my title node, I don't need it. Here instead of doing set title, I'm going to do title is equal to inventory name. And then that's going to call the InnerPanel set title, put that here, and that's going to be title. So I'm going to change the name, inventory. All right, now save this. I'm going to go in inventory, in inventory TSCN, save. Do you want to override? Yes. And then if I click my inventory, my label panel here, it wants me to assign it, but I can simply click the little arrow. It's going to take the parent one. All right, so if I start that, oh, now it's my equipment that has a problem, because my equipment is a 9-patch rect, and it doesn't like the fact that the base type for the inventory is a panel container. So I would need to change my equipment panel, stop that, player, inventory, equipment here, Let's focus on it. Yeah, so this one was not inherited or anything. I just made it in the scene here. I think the best way here would be to make this one also inherit from the inner panel. So inner panel, TSCN, new inherited scene. This one will be equipment. And then here I can do the merge from scene. I'll get the inventory player. This one, equipment. So it's basically the slot container I need. Okay, so we have them. So the script for this one I can remove, get the equipment script, put that on top. All right, so here I need to set the slot container. It's gonna be this one, head, chest of hand, and main hand. All right, now I'll put a minimum size for the equipment. So margin rect, so minimum size. The height, 70, okay. And in the Y, I don't think the Y is needed. So I'm gonna leave it at 0 because the parent will deal with it. Save that. I never had equipment scene, so I'll just put it in inventory folder and save. All right, let's see if everything is okay. Yeah, the label panel, I'll set it. The inventory name, is it set? No, it's not set anywhere. So what I'll do is I'll give it a name here, equipment, and that's it. Now save that. Now if I go in inventory player, let's see if that's gonna work. So if I remove this equipment, delete, and then get my equipment TSCN and put it at the top. There, panel name. I need to set it on the inventory player node, equipment, assign, equipment. All right, if I start, all right, it's there. Oh, but it's called panel name. I'm gonna have to change that. Oh, I think it might be because of the title. So just quickly, if I go in my inventory, I think here, since it's that's something, if it's its own code, I need to call set title. Yeah, if someone else call inventory dot title, then it would work. That's something. So yeah, so now it works. Equipment, left pocket, right pocket. All right, and yeah, they're using the new inherited panel. So pretty cool. All right. Oh yeah, and let's try to see if the stack works. So if I put my stack here, shift right click, split it, I'll drop it on the floor and pick it up. It goes on the stack. Nice. And let's see if I split it and split it once more here, and then like that. So now I have, now if I pick a full stack and try to pick it up, it should fill the first one, fill the second one, and then place a remainder in the first slot. So pick it up, and that works. Nice. So let's do the crafting UI. So here I'll use the inner panel that we just made, create a new inherited scene, and this one I'm gonna do crafting option. That's gonna be one crafting recipe. So in this margin container, I'm gonna add a new HBox container. So it's gonna be a bunch of columns, and then I'm gonna add a VBox container. So it's gonna be a list. The first list will be what you need to craft the recipe, so the ingredients, and then there's gonna be a little arrow. I'm gonna add a texture rect. I'm gonna import a few sprites here. Inventory sprites. I'm gonna create a new folder. Buttons. So I got my little arrow here, and I also imported the buttons. So yeah, I have it disabled, hover, normal, and pressed. So that'd be good. Let's go back in the scene. Texture rect. I'm gonna put the arrow in here, and I'll change it so it's keep centered. I'll rename this list to price, duplicate that underneath, arrow, produce, and the last list will be the commands. So here we'll add child node, button, and for now there's only going to be one button, which is going to be craft. So I'll go lower here at the bottom where it says theme override. I'll create a font for it. Let's see what I have. So in my font folder, let's see with font 8 maybe. That should be good. And then I'm gonna go in the styles, and I'm gonna set each style for my button. So the disabled, hover, normal, and price. I'm gonna set each of them to a new style box texture, and then I put the texture in the texture slot. It's like a 9-patch rec. You just place your dotted line, and I'm gonna activate the pixel snap so it snaps correctly. Oops, there you go. So that's one. Let's do the other. Okay, so now I'm gonna change each of those lists, and I'm going to change the alignment to center. And now let's start to add stuff in there. So for the list of ingredients, I'm going to use some kind of item slot with a number next to it to indicate how many of this item you need to craft this recipe. So for this, I'm gonna use a color rect for the background. So add a new child node, color rect, this one. I'm gonna do a black background with a bit of fading on it. So that should be good. But then we don't see it because the minimum size must be bigger. So I'll go in my rect data here, and the minimum size, I'll put something like 36 by 80. So I'm gonna get a inventory slot, the TSCN. I'm gonna drag it in here. I'm gonna break it so I'll modify what's inside. So right click on it and I'll do make local. So it's gonna be opening the scene, and it's not a scene anymore. So it's not the inventory slot TSCN anymore. I'm gonna remove the script from it, and that's it. That's gonna be my inventory slot. I'm gonna disconnect the signal on that. So this is visibility change, disconnect this. The inventory slot, I'm gonna do layout and center right. That's gonna be nice. And then I'm gonna add a label in there. So add child node, label, and this one I'll do full rect. So layout, full rect, and I'll scale it down. So it's taking only the little space there. So if I scale the parent, well, now it's not gonna work, but if I select my HBox container and select the size flag and put it to expand, it's gonna take all the space it can, but now the thing is the stuff inside are not. So each list, I also need to change their size flag. So this one, I'll make it expand, and the produce size flag expand. So they will share the space between each of those. Comments, I could do the same, size flag expand. So if I scale this, they're gonna expand. And now the label will take the space there, and the item slot will take this little part. So nice. If I click my label at the top, and I'll go down to the theme override, I have the font here. I can right click and copy. So I can go on my label here and go down, theme override, font, right click and paste. We'll have the same font. Now if I write something, so let's say 5, okay, it's an upper corner. Let's align center and v-align center. Oh, I can scale it just a bit so it's perfectly centered. And then I'll change the colors. Theme overrides, colors, font color, like that, and pick the back of the panel. So that's going to be the color of the text. All right, now we'll need to add some code to that, but that's pretty much it for this item quantity. So color rect, I'll call that item quantity, and then I'll save that as a scene. So right click, save branch as scene. I'll put that in the UI, item quantity, yeah, save that. All right, so let's say I want more. There, it's going to scale like this. And if I create another one and put it in the produce, so I could use like 3 different item, 3 different quantity to create some of this item. And you can also create more than one item. You could create more than you put in. That's up to you. You'll be able to create your recipe with all of this, and they should all fit in there. So let's remove everything in here. And let's create the main panel. So for the main list, I'm going to use a window here. So right click, new inherited scene. So I'm going to rename that for crafting list. And in here, yeah, so I only need to add a list. So VBox recipe list. All right. And then I can start working on the code. So here I have the script for the window. Let's remove it and create a new one. Crafting list, create. Oh, wait. Well, before creating the script, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save that in UI, crafting list, save. Now if I add my script, it's going to place it directly in UI. So I'll create that. So here we'll extend window. Well, we can remove all of that. We'll need to export a node path to get the recipe list. Now we can always place it right away. So crafting list, the label title, we can click the arrow so the parent gets it, recipe list, like that, and recipe. Then we'll have a display function. So when this window will be displayed, we'll see a list of recipe. So the function display, you get the recipes as a parameter here. So later we'll do a file, so a JSON file, like we did with the items and the affixes and stuff like that. So we'll do one for the recipes, and here it's going to be a list of price and produce, and then for each item in the list, in the recipe list that are already there, we'll remove them, and then for each recipe in the list, we'll add them. So we'll create a new crafting option. So we'll need to add it to the resource manager. We'll add child, we'll put it in the list, and then we'll set the info. So which ID it is, price, and the produce. Then we'll show it, and we'll set the size to the Y0, so it scales correctly, fits all the content. The X is just a preference. I like it when it's that size. So let's go in the resource manager and place a crafting option there. So I can control click the get instance. It's going to go in TSCN and get here. Crafting option will be preload. And inside of here, we'll put the crafting options. Crafting option. Oh, I didn't save it yet. So save that. Crafting option in UI, save it. All right. So script, resource manager, crafting options, TSCN, put that in here. All right, save this. I'm going to also add the item quantity. So here, item quantity, and it's going to be preload quantity. So item quantity TSCN, put that in here. We'll have both of those. Save this, and let's go back to the crafting list. So here we get an instance for the crafting option, and we set the info. So now we'll do the code for the crafting option. Here we get the name of the recipe, the price, and the produce. Let's go in the crafting option. Now it has the InnerPanel code. So if I click on it, yeah, InnerPanel, I'm going to remove this one and I'm going to add a new script in the UI. Yeah, let's create, right? So in here, we know that we're going to need the function set info for now. So this will be the recipe name. Well, the recipe ID is the recipe name. This one will be price and produce. So here we can extend InnerPanel, but yeah, here we'll need a reference to get the price list, the produce list, and also the crafting button. So this one is craft, set it like that. So I'll export those value and save that. So now if I click my crafting option, so let's reset the title so it gets the label correctly. Price list, produce list, and craft button. All right, the craft button is to enable it or disable it. There's two conditions to check if you can craft something. So we'll need also two variables here, which are the price and produce. So the first thing we'll do here is set the price and produce. Here I'll change price items and produce items, just so I can differentiate those here. Then produce is equal to produce items. Then we'll set the title, and we'll set it to, I'll do it like that, hyphen, and in the center I'll do a percentage sign S, after that percentage sign, with the value that I want to put in, which is recipe ID. Now I need to set the list for the prices. So for each item data in the price items, which are going to come in as data, I'm going to get a price node from the item quantity, resource manager, and then I'm going to add it to the list, and then I'm going to add it to the list of price list, add child, price node. Then I'll get the item. So the item is equal to get item, and I'll just get the ID. And then the price node, I'll set its info to item and the quantity. So before continuing here, I'm going to go in the item quantity and set its code. Let's open my item quantity. There's no script, so I'm going to create one. Item quantity in UI, yes. So in here, it's going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to export two values for the item container and the label quantity. So if I save that, get those, item container, pretty simple, and the label quantity is the label. Then if I go back in the code, the only function I'm going to have here is the set info. And that's it. So I'll get an item and a quantity. Then I'll just set the item container to the item, because the item is a texture rect, and the label quantity is going to be the quantity that I'm passing in. Pretty simple. Save that and go back. Crafting option. So after that, I'm going to do the produce list, and it's going to be pretty much the same. So I can copy this list and put it back below. The only difference is here, produce items. Then it's going to be here, produce list, and here instead of price node, it's going to be produce node. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the crafting list. I will add a little ready function to test the display here, but before I'm going to create the recipe JSON file, the data file. So if we go in our items, the data, and in here, open in file manager, here we can add a new JSON file. So new document recipe, then it's going to be .json. All right, so let's edit that one. So the way this data file will work is we're going to have the main dictionary. Inside of it, we'll have the different name for the recipe list, because you will have multiple recipes list. So here, let's say that this one will be tier 1, and this is going to be a dictionary, which will contain other recipe. So this one could be wood, but that's going to be the name, the key. So let's say the wood recipe, we do a new dictionary again. So here we have price, which would be an array. So you could have multiple ingredients in there. It could be also empty. Inside of this array, you can do multiple dictionaries. The data that you need to put in here is the ID. So the ID of the ingredients. So here I could have wood, so just a piece of wood, and then I would add another thing, which is quantity, and how many is it gonna cost? Let's say 1. And then the next thing is produce. The produce, which will be the same, an array of dictionaries, and this is what you will get. So here I could say the ID of what I'm gonna get is stone brick, and you could use that to create a basic shop too, because the price could be 1 piece of gold, 3, 4, 5 piece of gold, and the produce could be an armor piece, a weapon. You could use that for that too. So you could use that for different things. Stone brick quantity is, let's say, 2. So this, you would have the tier 1 recipe list, would contain only the wood recipe, which is kind of the reverse. This one should be stone brick, because that's what I'm crafting. I'm crafting 2 stone bricks, but I'm using 1 pieces of wood to do it. So I'm gonna bring a bunch of recipe that I already created. All right, so in here I have my tier 1 list, which has the wood. It's crafted from nothing, and you get 1 pieces of wood. Then I'm gonna add a plank item, and the price to craft this one is 1 pieces of wood, and it's gonna give you 2 planks. And then you can create a small healing potion with 20 pieces of wood. I'm gonna give you 1. And then I have my tier 2 crafting list, which has different recipes. And at the end, I have a shop. So if I use the recipes list ID shop, I'm gonna get this list. So I could get a iron sword with some gold, t-shirt, and so on. All right, let's save that. And let's go back in Godot. So I'm gonna go in the resource manager, and I'm gonna load the recipes in here. I'm gonna go at the top. I'm gonna create a new path. So recipe path, which is gonna be recipes.json, right? So if I go down here, this here is to load the stats, and then underneath load the recipe. So here what I need is file open, and change this to recipe path file read. Then I'll add a variable here, var recipe info is a dictionary. So then it's this recipe info is going to be equal to rs.json. And we get the file as text. And at the end, file.close. Then we can just get a function to get our recipe. Function get recipes from the ID of the list, and yeah, which list ID we want. So then just return recipes info ID. All right, save that. So now if we go back in our crafting list code, crafting list here at the top, we'll create the little function already, and here we'll do display resource manager.get recipes, and let's try tier 1 and save this. Now we'll go in our main scene and we'll add the crafting list. In the UI folder, I have my crafting list tscn, put that in Windows. So right there. All right, so let's try that. So if I start the game, oh, I forgot to place the new items, because now it's telling me that it doesn't know what plank is. Stop that. I'm gonna add 2 new items. So in items, sprites, import those. So the new item I have is the plank and the rock. Now we need to go in the resource manager and set those sprites. Duplicate that one, plank. Once those are there, we need to go in the item JSON file. So let's go back in data, open in file manager. We'll open the items JSON. So here we have the wood. We can duplicate that plank. It's a material, and let's say the stack size could be more. This is for testing. And then stone brick, I'm gonna add a rock. Pretty simple, and the stack size could be 5. So save that. Now this should work. Start. All right, so now I have my Windows name. I forgot to change the name of the crafting list. But yeah, you have your tree here. I have my little plank. So now let's add the code to be able to craft those items, because now if I click those buttons, it doesn't work. Well, let's do that, and maybe we'll fix the title too. Oh yeah, and I forgot, in crafting option, I don't really need to set those little hyphen there because I already set those in the set title. They're there, right there. I'm gonna create a function to set the crafting button, because each time your inventory content change, you'll need to check if you still have space for the produce or if you have the recipe ingredients available. And here at the top, when we display the info, we're gonna call this set crafting button. And at the bottom here, we'll have this function. Let's make some place. Now here we're gonna have a new group. So I'm gonna introduce the group crafting. So let's say if I go in the player inventory, the two bottom panel will be used for the crafting, and it's not gonna check for the equipment. Maybe you could use equipment to craft, so it's not gonna check your equipment that you have currently equipped. You could include it if you want, and you could also include inventory of a chest next to your crafting table or something like that. So here we're gonna have to check if this group has the item price and if the group player has the space for these items. So set craft button, put that here, set craft. And if we have the items and we have the space, then we'll set the button to not disabled. So we already have the function has space for items. We just need to check the function has items. So let's create that. That will go in inventory manager. Let's go at the bottom. All right, so here let's add a new function, has item. We'll pass in the items that we want to get if it is, and the group ID, and that's going to be returning a boolean. And then inside of that, for each item, data in the items, because it's going to be the data from the recipes. Those items, well, I guess I could call that items data, just to be sure that we know that this is data. So here, what we'll do is we will get the count of these items that we have in this group. If the count of those items is less than the quantity that we need, then we return false. You don't have the quantity. If we do have it, then return true. So let's create the function get item count. So this one, I'm just going to put it right there. Get item count. We'll get the ID of the item we're looking for, and then the group ID. So pretty simple. We'll start the count to 0. We'll go through all the inventories in this group, and then we'll call the inventory and get the count in this inventory and return it. So let's create get item count in the inventory script. Inventory, go at the bottom, just before open, and I'm just gonna put that there. So get item count, the ID of the item, pretty simple. We start the count at 0 for each slot in this inventory. If there is an item and the item is the ID that we're looking for, then increase the count by the quantity and then return the count. Just a little easy function. Perfect. Inventory manager, that's it. Get item count. And then the has item, we have the quantity that we're looking for. Good. Return true. So now what I'll do is I'll go in the inventory player and we'll add the two inventory here, inventory left and right, to the group crafting. Copy that and paste it. This will be crafting and this will be crafting. So it'll be in the group player and crafting at the same time. So let's try that. So if I start the game, now we can see that I can craft the wood because I have the ingredient, which is nothing, and I have space in my inventory for that. So it works to set the craft button disabled or enabled only when I set the info. That's nice, but I'd like to be able to craft something and to make sure that the button updates if the content of my inventory changes. So let's add a few things here. So in the crafting option, when you click the craft button, so here, node, button pressed, so double click that, on craft pressed, connect. Here, place below. So when you click craft, what we'll do is we'll call inventory manager, we'll remove items, which are the price. So here we'll create those items, get items, and we'll remove those from the inventory group crafting. And then we'll add items, create those from the produce list, and we'll place those in the player inventory group. So I think the add items already exist, but the remove item doesn't. So let's create that one. Control click the inventory manager. And again, I'm gonna go at the bottom to add it just above the first signal. And let's pop this in. Remove items. So here what we'll do is for each of those items that we're getting, we'll go through all the inventories and then we'll remove the quantity. And then we'll set the current item quantity back to what it's remaining. If it's 0, then we break and we go to the next item. And the quantity of the item can be higher than the stack size. So if I want to have like 100 plank, but the stack size for the plank is 20, then I would need 5 stack of plank. This is going to work because in these items, there's going to be a plank item with 100 plank, and then it's going to remove its quantity from the item in the inventory. And yeah, we'll need to go and do this one, remove item quantity in the inventory. So let's do that, inventory, and right there, let's add this one. This one is going to be a little bit bigger. So remove item quantity, ID and the quantity. So then we'll do the reverse loop like we did before. It's going to remove the item starting from the end of the inventory. Well, that's just a preference. You could remove the item from the start of the inventory. If there is an item in the current slot and it's the same, then we can change the quantity. So here we'll do if quantity is greater or equal to the item currently in the slot. So that means that we'll remove completely the quantity of this item. So we'll have to remove it. We'll remove the quantity of the item that was in the slot from the quantity that we need. And then this item in the slot will set the quantity to 0 and we set the slot item to null. This item is deleted. The else case, if we need less item than there is in the slot, then we'll simply remove the quantity from the item, and then we'll say that the content has changed and we'll return 0. So there's nothing remaining from this item. And at the end, we'll send a signal, content has changed also, and we will return the quantity that remains to be removed from other stacks. All right, so that should allow us to get item, but now if I craft some item, the other buttons won't change. So what I'll do is I'll go in the crafting option and I'll add a ready function, ready. So here I'll just listen to the inventory group content change. So when an inventory changes, I want to check again if I can craft. So at the bottom, I'm going to add this function on inventory group changed. So on inventory group changed, I'll get the groups here. So if the groups has player or if the groups has crafting, then I'll check again for the crafting button. So that should be good. Let's try that. All right, so now I have my crafting window, and if I craft some trees, it removes nothing and it adds 1 wood. Right, let's craft a bunch, and now the crafting for the planks activated. So if I craft 20 wood, I should be able to craft a small healing potion. So it's going to be 2 stacks of trees, and now I can craft this. And if I click craft, it's going to start removing item from the end. So by that, and yeah. So if I put my item here, it's going to place my wood on the stack that is available. And if I have multiple, it's going to fill the first one and then the second. And if I craft, it's going to use the item from the end and fill from the start. Wait, it's not. Oh yeah, I just saw something. I do start from the end, but I start from the first inventory. So it will pick the item here first. Then it's going to go in the end of the next one if there's none in the first inventory. So I guess I could change that. So the item are removed in reversed from the inventory too. That's something that could change. But yeah, we can craft now. We have some planks, we have some potion, and we have the wood. So now if we go in the crafting list, instead of displaying it just like that at the ready, we'll change it and we'll create some crafting table. So I'll go in the interactables folder and I'll import my table. So I have a little table like that, a nice little pixelated table. So what I'll do is I'll start from the interactable chest to create the crafting table. So if I open this one, what I'll do is Control-Shift-S to save it, and I'll call that crafting table and save this one. So I'll change the sprite for my little table, change the zone so it's bigger than the table. Let's change the collision shape so you can collide with it correctly. I'll put it like that, add some to the side. All right, then we need to change the code for it. Here, that's the code for the interactable chest. I'll remove that and create a new one. Crafting table, right? Create that. Here, I'll replace everything by my code. So here, I'll export the crafting list. So this is going to be the ID of the crafting list. So like tier 1, tier 2, or shop, or anything you would like. the action will be craft, and the object name will be the name of the crafting. So when you will interact with this area, it will send a signal, crafting opened, and the ID of the crafting. And there's going to be out of range for the crafting also. So crafting opened. So let's copy that. Let's go in the signal manager, interactable. We can add a new signal here, crafting open with the crafting list ID. And the other one is the signal crafting out of range. All right, let's connect to those signal now. So let's do crafting open, and that's going to be in the crafting list. So crafting list, and the ready here, instead of doing display, will connect signal. So remove that, and there you go. So signal manager, connect, crafting open, and out of range. So let's create those two functions. On crafting opened, will display the resource manager and get recipes and this list ID. And then when the crafting is out of range, we'll just hide. So that's pretty cool. Now let's go in the dungeon. Main 2D. We'll go here, dungeon. Go in the scene of the dungeon. Let's add a little room here. There you go. And now let's add the table. So crafting table. That's going to go in here. Well, it's called chest. I forgot to change the name in the scene here. Crafting table. All right. Let's go back into dungeon. I can remove it and put it back. And there you go. Crafting table. Let's put that in the walls so it's all at the same place. So crafting list tier 1. And I guess to make sure that I know that this is the tier 1, I could add a child node, a sprite, and I'll add a little tree. So it's wood. So little wood PNG on top of the table. Just to know. Crafting table wood, and I'll duplicate that, move it on the side. This is going to be crafting table stone, which is going to be the tier 2. So I'll change the little image for the rock, and I could have my third table, which is going to be a shop, right? Then the little sprite, I'll put the gold coin and move that here. All right, so in theory, oh yeah, I need to change this for shop. All right, so in theory, I should be able to go there and interact with those tables. The only thing I'm going to change is in the main scene, I'm going to hide the crafting list here, and I'm going to go and see if I can set the title. I'm going to go in and just change the name Windows name for crafting there. Save that. All right, let's see if that works. Start. Let's go to our new little room, and let's try to open the tier 1. So press E to craft, and crafting. So I craft my trees. All right, pretty cool. If I go out of range, it closes. Open the next one, and this one I can craft some stones, some bricks. I can get a crystal, and then I can create a rarity upgrade kit with 5 stone and 5 crystal, and it's going to give me back 1 crystal. Let's scale a bit the UI, close it, see a bit better. And yeah, so I can craft a bunch of stones. They stack only 5, then craft some stone bricks. All right, and then the last one is the shop. So if I get some gold here, I can purchase some items. So I have iron sword and shield. So let's see. I'm gonna get some gold in those treasure chests. There's nothing here, and there's nothing here. Is there gold there? Yeah, gold coin. I have 1. All right. So if I look at that, I can buy a shield. Well, yeah, the button is craft, so I guess it should be changed to buy. Yeah, you could add more information in the recipes, maybe to get what like the name of the buttons. Could be infuse, craft, fuse, and different naming for that. So that's pretty much it. Let's see if I forgot anything. All right, so that's it. Yeah, that took a long time to do. All right, so that's it for this part. That was a big one, and I hope you liked it. And if you want more, let me know. I think the next part I'm thinking about is to count the stats for the player's equipment, and then probably saving the inventory and loading the inventory and everything like that. So that would be pretty interesting. So let me know if you have anything that you would like to see in there. I would be happy to look at that. There's a few other things I'm gonna add to, probably more options in the inventory. I'll see about that. So a big thank you for my patrons, and a big thanks to Lithaline. Thank you a lot. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.